Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that often glorifies strength, perfection, and control. We are taught to wear masks, to hide our scars, and to present ourselves as polished, unshakable beings. But let me tell you a profound truth. It is not our perfection that connects us to others. It is our vulnerability. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as weakness. We think that opening up, admitting fear, or showing emotion makes us fragile. But in reality, vulnerability is the birthplace of trust, intimacy, and true human connection. When we allow ourselves to be seen, not just our achievements, but also our struggles, we give others permission to be real too. And in that shared space of honesty, bonds are formed that are unbreakable. Think about the relationships in your life that feel the deepest. They are not built on flawless perfection. They are built on moments when someone said, "I'm struggling," and the other replied, "Me too." They are built when a friend confesses fear, and instead of judgment, they find compassion. Vulnerability is the bridge that turns acquaintances into friends, partners into soulmates, and colleagues into allies. Without vulnerability, there is no trust. Without trust, there is no true connection. When we hide behind walls, we may feel safe, but we also feel alone. But when we dare to open the door, even just a little, we discover the courage to love and to be loved. So I say to you today, don't be afraid of vulnerability. Be afraid of a life where no one truly knows you. Be afraid of a world where all your relationships are shallow because you never risked showing your heart. Vulnerability is not about oversharing or weakness. It is about courage. The courage to say, "This is me, and I trust you with it." If we want deeper friendships, stronger love, and meaningful communities, we must embrace vulnerability. Because it is through our cracks that the light of connection shines the brightest. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage. When most people hear the word vulnerability, they instantly associate it with weakness. They imagine fragility, helplessness, or being exposed to harm. Our culture has conditioned us to believe that showing emotions or admitting struggles somehow makes us less strong. From a young age, we are told to toughen up, hold it together, or never let them see you cry. These messages have shaped our understanding of vulnerability in a way that is deeply flawed. The truth is this: vulnerability is not weakness. It is one of the greatest acts of courage a human being can demonstrate. Why do I call it courage? Because vulnerability demands that we lower our guard. It asks us to take off the mask that society pressures us to wear and reveal our authentic selves. That act alone is terrifying for many. We fear judgment, rejection, or misunderstanding. Yet, despite these fears, when someone chooses to be vulnerable, they are not demonstrating frailty. They are showing extraordinary bravery. It is easy to live behind walls. It takes immense strength to tear them down. Think about it. Which is harder? To smile and pretend you are fine when you're breaking inside, or to admit honestly to someone, "I'm struggling and I need support"? Which takes more courage, to live in silence, carrying the weight of your pain alone, or to share that pain and risk being truly seen? The answer is clear. Vulnerability takes far more strength than hiding ever will. When Brené Brown, one of the most influential researchers on vulnerability, studied thousands of stories, she found a powerful truth. The people who lived the most wholehearted, fulfilling lives were not those who avoided vulnerability, but those who embraced it. They understood that life is not about perfection. It is about authenticity. They were willing to show up, even when there were no guarantees of acceptance or success. That willingness is the essence of courage. Let's take an example from relationships. Many people fear saying, "I love you" first because they don't want to risk rejection. But the person who says it, despite the fear, is practicing vulnerability. And in that moment, whether the words are returned or not, they are showing courage far greater than someone who hides their feelings forever. Vulnerability is what allows us to love, to connect, and to live without regret. Now, some may argue, but if I'm vulnerable, I can be hurt. That's true. Vulnerability does open the door to pain, but it also opens the door to joy. If you avoid vulnerability to protect yourself, you may prevent hurt, but you also block intimacy, trust, and deep human connection. It's like refusing to plant seeds because you fear storms. Without planting, there can be no harvest. Without vulnerability, there can be no real love, no real connection, and no true belonging. So let us redefine vulnerability. It is not crying in weakness. It is crying because we are human. It is not asking for help because we are incapable. It is asking for help because we are brave enough to admit we cannot do it all alone. Vulnerability is not losing control. It is having the courage to let go of control and step into authenticity. When we understand this truth, vulnerability becomes a superpower. It transforms the way we see ourselves and the way we connect with others. It shows us that being human is not about being flawless. It is about being fearless enough to be real. Ladies and gentlemen, vulnerability is not weakness. It is the raw, unfiltered courage that makes us truly alive. And the moment we embrace it, we unlock the doorway to genuine strength and true connection. Vulnerability builds trust. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, whether it's between friends, partners, colleagues, or family. Without trust, there can be no depth, no real safety, and no lasting bond. But here's the truth many people overlook. Trust is not built through perfection, performance, or pretending to have it all together. Trust is built through vulnerability. Think for a moment about the people in your life whom you trust the most. Why do you trust them? Is it because they've never made a mistake, or because they've never shown weakness? Of course not. You trust them because they've been real with you. They've shared their struggles, admitted their fears, or confessed when they were wrong. In doing so, they revealed that they are human, and in their humanity you found honesty. That honesty became the soil in which trust grew. When we hide behind masks of perfection, people may admire us, but they cannot trust us. Perfection creates distance. It sets up an image so polished that others feel they can't approach us, can't relate to us, and certainly can't rely on us when life gets tough. Vulnerability, on the other hand, breaks down barriers. It says, I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to be real with you. And when people see that realness, they feel safe to open up as well. That is how trust begins. Think about leadership. Many assume that leaders must always appear strong, confident, and flawless. But the greatest leaders are those who are willing to admit when they don't have all the answers, who ask for input, and who share their own challenges. When a leader says, I don't know, but I'm committed to finding a way with you, they are practicing vulnerability. And that vulnerability doesn't weaken their authority. It strengthens their bond with the people they lead. It builds trust because it shows integrity. The same principle applies in personal relationships. Imagine a marriage where both partners always pretend to be fine, never admitting hurt, fear, or doubt. That relationship may look perfect on the outside, but inside it is fragile. Why? Because there is no trust without vulnerability. A strong marriage, or any strong relationship, is not one without struggles. It is one where two people can look at each other and say, I'm scared, I'm hurt, or I made a mistake, and still feel safe in that honesty. Vulnerability creates the emotional glue that holds trust together. Now, some may wonder, but what if I open up and people use my vulnerability against me? That is a valid concern. Vulnerability must be practiced with wisdom. Not everyone has earned the right to see your deepest self, but when you choose wisely, when you allow the right people in, you give them the opportunity to prove themselves worthy of your trust. And when they respond with empathy, that trust deepens. Here's a powerful truth. People don't trust those who are always strong. They trust those who are consistently authentic. Authenticity matters far more than appearance. Vulnerability communicates authenticity in a way that no amount of confidence ever could. Let's imagine two bridges. One is made of steel, polished and seemingly perfect, but hollow on the inside. The other is made of wood with cracks and rough edges, but it's solid and real. Which bridge would you trust to carry your weight? Most of us would choose the second one. Vulnerability is like that second bridge. It may not look perfect, but it is real, and realness is what holds people together. So if you want to build trust with your partner, your children, your friends, or even your team at work, start with vulnerability. Be willing to say, I don't know, I need help, or I made a mistake. Those words are not a sign of weakness. They are a powerful invitation to trust, because in the end, vulnerability is the language of trust. And when you dare to speak it, you open the door to relationships that are stronger, deeper, and unshakable. Vulnerability creates deeper relationships. Every human being longs for connection. We want to feel seen, heard, and understood. But here's the challenge. Too often, our relationships stay on the surface. We talk about the weather, our jobs, or the latest news, but rarely about what truly moves our hearts. We laugh together, share good times, and celebrate successes, yet when it comes to revealing our deeper selves, many of us hesitate, and it is this hesitation that keeps our relationships shallow. The truth is, vulnerability is the bridge that takes relationships from surface-level interaction to deep, meaningful connection. Why is that? Because real intimacy, whether emotional, romantic, or even in friendships, cannot exist without vulnerability. Vulnerability is what allows two people to go beyond appearances and enter each other's truths. It is what transforms an acquaintance into a true friend or a partner into a soulmate. Without it, we are simply two people standing side by side, but not truly intertwined. Think about your closest friendships. Chances are they became close not because you always had fun together, but because at some point one of you opened up. Maybe you admitted to feeling lost, or they shared a personal struggle. Maybe you cried in front of them, or they confided in you during a difficult time. That moment of vulnerability created a bond, and suddenly the relationship became more than casual. It became meaningful. Relationships grow deeper when we allow ourselves to be seen fully, not just in our strength, but also in our struggles. When you tell someone, I feel insecure about this, or I'm afraid of failing, you're not pushing them away. You're inviting them closer. You're saying, I trust you with the parts of me I usually keep hidden. That trust opens the door to empathy, compassion, and genuine connection. In romantic relationships, vulnerability is especially powerful. Many couples struggle not because they don't love each other, but because they stop being vulnerable. They hide behind silence, hoping their partner will just know how they feel, or they build walls to avoid conflict, thinking it will protect the relationship. But in truth, those walls create distance. A marriage or partnership grows stronger not when both people are perfect, but when both people are willing to be honest about their fears, dreams, and wounds. Vulnerability is the lifeline that keeps love alive. The same principle applies in family relationships. A child will never feel close to a parent who always appears flawless, unshakable, and unapproachable. But when a parent admits mistakes, apologizes, or shares their own struggles, the child learns that it's okay to be human. That honesty doesn't diminish authority, it deepens connection. Vulnerability creates an atmosphere of trust where real communication can flourish. Even in friendships and professional relationships, vulnerability deepens bonds. When colleagues open up about challenges, they stop being competitors and start being allies. When friends share their fears, they move from small talk to soul talk. And that is where real closeness begins. Of course, vulnerability requires risk. Every time you open your heart, there is a possibility of rejection or misunderstanding. But the greater risk is what happens when you refuse to be vulnerable: isolation, loneliness, and relationships that never grow beyond the surface. Vulnerability is scary, yes, but it is also the only path to true connection. Here's the beautiful paradox: the very thing we are most afraid to show, our raw, unpolished selves, is the very thing others most want to see, because when we dare to be vulnerable, we give others permission to do the same. And when two people meet in that place of honesty, the relationship becomes unshakable. So if you want deeper friendships, stronger partnerships, and more meaningful family bonds, practice vulnerability. Share your truth, even when it trembles on your lips. Speak your fears, your dreams, your wounds, because vulnerability is the soil in which intimacy grows, and without it, relationships remain only a shadow of what they could be. Ladies and gentlemen, let us remember this. Vulnerability doesn't weaken relationships, it strengthens them. It takes them from surface, level to soul, level, from ordinary to extraordinary. And in that depth, we find the true beauty of human connection. Without vulnerability, there is isolation. One of the greatest ironies of life is this. We all crave connection, yet we often build walls that keep others out. We long to be understood, yet we hide our true selves behind masks of strength, confidence, or perfection. We want people to know us deeply, but we are terrified of being judged. And so, in our attempt to protect ourselves, we isolate ourselves. The truth is, without vulnerability, we may feel safe, but we will also feel alone. Let's think about this carefully. Imagine someone who always smiles, always says they're fine, and never admits when they are struggling. On the outside, they look strong and in control, but inside, they may feel deeply unseen and unheard. Why? Because no one truly knows them. People only know the mask they wear, and masks may protect us from judgment, but they also prevent us from experiencing intimacy. Isolation doesn't always look like loneliness. You can be surrounded by people, family, friends, colleagues, and still feel completely alone if you never let anyone see the real you. It's like being in a crowded room with a locked heart. You hear the noise, you see the faces, but no one reaches you because you won't let them in. That is the silent prison of a life without vulnerability. Many of us hide because we believe vulnerability will scare people away, but the opposite is true. Vulnerability draws people in, while pretending pushes them away. Think about relationships where someone refuses to open up. Their partner senses the distance, feels the wall, and eventually the relationship weakens, not because of a lack of love, but because of a lack of openness. Love cannot survive where vulnerability is absent, because love requires truth, and truth requires courage. This is why vulnerability is not optional if we want true connection. Without it, we may avoid pain, but we also avoid belonging. We become trapped in isolation, even in the middle of relationships. This isolation is one of the leading causes of broken marriages, fractured friendships, and even strained parent-child bonds. People don't drift apart because they stop loving. They drift apart because they stop being real. Consider the words of the poet Rumi. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Our wounds, our insecurities, our struggles, our doubts, are not meant to be hidden forever. They are doorways to deeper connection. When we share them, others find the courage to share theirs. When we hide them, we shut the door not only on others, but also on ourselves. Isolation is painful, but what makes it worse is that it's often self-created. We think we're protecting ourselves, but really, we're building invisible walls that keep out the very love and acceptance we long for. Vulnerability tears down those walls. It says, "Here I am, imperfect but real." And when we dare to say that, we discover that others are relieved, because they've been waiting for someone to go first. Of course, vulnerability requires discernment. We don't need to pour our soul out to everyone we meet. But if we never risk vulnerability with anyone, our relationships will remain shallow and our hearts will remain hidden. True belonging only happens when someone knows the parts of you that are unpolished, uncertain, and unfinished, and chooses to stay. Without vulnerability, there is no belonging. Without belonging, there is only isolation. And isolation, no matter how safe it feels at first, leaves us empty. The human heart was not made to be hidden. It was made to be shared. So I say this, if you want to break free from the loneliness that so many silently carry, practice vulnerability. Open up to someone you trust. Admit when you're afraid, share when you're hurting, and express when you're unsure. That act may feel risky, but it is the only way to replace isolation with intimacy and loneliness with love. Because in the end, life is not about being perfectly safe. It's about being truly connected. And without vulnerability, that connection will never come. Vulnerability is the pathway to love, and connection. At the heart of every human desire lies one simple truth. We all want to love and to be loved. We want to feel connected, accepted, and valued, yet so often we search for love while hiding the very parts of ourselves that make love possible. We put on masks, polish our image, and try to present only the best version of ourselves, thinking that will make us more lovable. But here's the paradox. Love cannot grow in perfection. It grows in authenticity, and authenticity is born from vulnerability. Vulnerability is the pathway to love because love requires truth. If someone loves only the version of you that you show to the world, the version that is always smiling, always strong, always confident, then deep inside you'll wonder, do they really love me or just the mask I wear? True love, whether in friendship, romance, or family, can only exist when we allow others to see the raw, unfiltered us. When we say, "This is me, not polished, not perfect, but real," that is when love becomes genuine. Think about the greatest connections in your life. They probably began when someone was vulnerable. Maybe a friend admitted they were struggling, and you felt closer because you realized they trusted you with their truth. Maybe you shared your own fears with a partner, and instead of running, they embraced you even more. That moment of vulnerability was not weakness. It was the seed of deeper connection. We often fear that if people see our flaws, they will walk away. But more often than not, the opposite happens. Vulnerability invites empathy. It draws people closer because they realize they are not alone in their struggles. When you share your fears, others feel permission to share theirs. When you reveal your insecurities, others let down their guard too. This mutual honesty creates a bond far stronger than any facade ever could. Consider love without vulnerability. It becomes shallow, conditional, and fragile. Partners hide their pain to avoid conflict. Friends stay on the surface to avoid judgment. Families pretend everything is fine, while hearts grow distant. Without vulnerability, love suffocates under silence and pretense. But when vulnerability enters the relationship, something shifts. Walls come down, hearts open, and love begins to breathe. Even in leadership and communities, the principle holds true. A leader who pretends to have all the answers may earn respect, but not connection. A leader who admits mistakes and asks for help earns trust and loyalty. Vulnerability doesn't weaken bonds. It strengthens them because it allows love, empathy, and trust to flow freely. Of course, vulnerability is risky. To open your heart is to risk being hurt. But here's the truth. The risk of vulnerability is far less painful than the emptiness of living without love. Yes, someone may reject you, misunderstand you, or even hurt you, but when you choose vulnerability wisely, with people who have shown themselves trustworthy, you open the door to the kind of connection that makes life worth living. The poet Khalil Gibran once said, "Love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation." I would add, love knows not its own depth until the hour of vulnerability, because it is only when we show our true selves that we discover who is willing to stay, and those who stay, despite our flaws, fears, and wounds, are the ones who truly love us. So let us stop fearing vulnerability. Instead, let us embrace it as the pathway to love and connection. Because in the end, love is not about finding someone who admires our mask, it's about finding someone who cherishes our soul. And that can only happen when we are brave enough to be vulnerable. Ladies and gentlemen, vulnerability is not the enemy of love. It is its birthplace. It is the doorway through which connection enters. And if we walk through it with courage, we will discover relationships richer, deeper, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. Ladies and gentlemen, we began this journey by challenging a common misconception, that vulnerability is weakness. But as we have explored, vulnerability is, in fact, the highest form of courage. It is the courage to take off the mask, to stand in authenticity, and to say, "This is who I am." We saw how vulnerability is the foundation of trust, because honesty builds stronger bonds than perfection ever will. We discovered how vulnerability deepens relationships, transforming surface-level interactions into meaningful connections that touch the soul. We understood that without vulnerability, we risk a life of isolation, surrounded by people yet feeling unseen. And finally, we embrace the truth that vulnerability is the pathway to love itself, the birthplace of intimacy, belonging, and connection. The message is clear. Vulnerability is not something to be feared, but something to be practiced with courage and wisdom. It is not about oversharing with everyone, but about daring to be real with the right people. It is about creating space where trust, empathy, and love can grow. So I leave you with this thought. The strength of your life will not be measured by how well you hide your scars, but by how bravely you share them. Your vulnerability is not a liability. It is your greatest strength. Because it is only when we are truly seen that we are truly loved. Dare to be vulnerable. Dare to be real. And in doing so, you will not only discover the power of true connection, you will also discover the beauty of being fully alive.
Thank you.